Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today we're finally going to be taking a look at the Asus Aries 2 video card. It's two 7970s on there. Both the 7970s have got 3GB of video memory available to them, and it's obviously got this new funky all-in-one water cooling loop on it. And I did do a video on this previously, but before I wasn't allowed to speak to you about performance results and everything due to the NDA. So I'll put a link up there so you can have a good look at the card where we unboxed it from the briefcase. I took the lid off to have a look at the water cooling and everything that's underneath. So if you want to go and have a look at that, click that link and then you'll be able to go and see it. Today we're going to be talking about all the performance stuff, and then the conclusion and everything at the end. But what I'll do is I'll shush my mouth quickly now, and we'll move straight on to getting down to the nitty gritty with the card. Okay, then peeps, let's take a look at GPU tweak. Now, I've had some bad experiences with this software in the past, but I've obviously done all my testing and everything now. And I have to say this is probably one of the better GPU tweaks that I've ever used. The way this works with this card is much better than the ones that have come along in the past. Now, straight out the box, we can see that the card's 1100 megahertz on the GPU core. That's the voltage there. Memory core clock is 6600. And then we've got options there to change the fan speed, the GPU voltage, and the power target. Now the power target is like a percentage, it's the amperage that you can adjust. Up here the GPU voltage and the GPU clock are linked, but you can unlock them at the left hand side and change them independently if you want. We just put this back to default. Now in the settings, we'll go to GPU info. That's got like a GPU Z readout on the side, so you can make a core clock change, and you can change it all yourself. So you can put this back to, we go to that, and then we can go back to default, and you can see it'll all drop again. But anyway, right, so you can see clocks and everything if you want to change it. But in the settings, just for those of you that are going to be maybe wanting to push things even further than you can here, because it goes up to 1500, but should you be that mental, you can go to settings, tune setting, and then overclocking range enhancement, and it will flicker the screen for a bit when I click apply. Right, so bring this back up here, go to tuning. Now it goes all the way up to 2200. I'd be very, very surprised if anyone actually got it up that high, but still the options are there, and it's just a flick of a switch. There is a BIOS switch on the card as well, so you can flick between two different ones. I happen to think you'd probably end up killing it if you tried, freezing it and, trying to get it to go that high, but you never know with these things. It's nice to have an option there. Anyway, so you've got that increase as well. The live update, you can just flick and it'll update the BIOS of the card, and I'm not too sure about the drivers. I know 100% it does it for the card BIOS, because I checked it earlier. Now, so my overclocks, we ended up settling for 1200, and then this went up to 1325. This we got up to 7250. Fan speed we left at stock, although you can turn it up, and the power target we just turned right the way up here. Now, not every card will do this, even though there is only 1000. Yours may do it better. You may do it on lower volts, may do a better clock, but that's the score I use for my overclock. We did find that after using the cards for a bit, some of the scores dropped down. It wasn't because of the overclock, because if we go back to stock, the stock scores would drop as well. We're not 100% sure what had caused it. I think the card had just kind of like settled and bedded in a bit. They were epic when they first got here. Now we've not really raised the volts or anything like that, so it's nothing to worry in that kind of respect. Like I said, they've just settled. I've tested it loads at stock over the last few days since they did drop, and they have properly leveled out now. And now we've got back to the point where the overclocks have got going up and settling. It's just when I first got them, they seemed to pump out scores like a crazy person. It was like they were possessed. And now they're kind of back where you'd kind of expect them to be. Anyway, so it is a little bit complicated, but nevertheless, that is that done. Now, what I do want to do while we're talking about this is I'm going to go here, screen resolution. Yeah, we're still in 1920 by 1080. I need to make sure. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to restart, get the rig ready for 2560 by 1440, which means flicking the BIOS switch on the card. I'll be back and then we'll do a new benchmark. Right then peeps, just wanted to show you a new benchmark that we're going to be using from All Benchmark, and it's called Catzilla. It's a little bit nuts. What I'm going to be showing you is a 1440 2560 by 1440 test, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the old speakers on because I never normally use the audio, but we're going to turn the speakers on. I'm going to clip my microphone up and I'm going to let you watch the first kind of all-in-one bit of the benchmark and then stop it, because then it does it all in one together, and then it breaks it down into physics and then fur textures and stuff like that, and it does them all in separate little bits. But we'll do the thing first, because you've got to watch this, considering when we've been so used to watching things like 3D Mark and stuff. This is brilliant. I love the music and it cracks me up as well. So I'm just going to clip my mic up. Right, so microphone's up, that's why I'm distant, and we'll clip this and let it run. Remember, it's 2560 by 1440 resolution with everything turned up. And that's it. I love it. Now it breaks down into all separate bits, so I won't bore you with this. Hokey chokey, on to benchmarks. Now, on this side, we have a stock GTX 690, and on this side we have a stock Aries 2. Now obviously this is kind of a dual kind of 670-ish, 680 kind of card. Does perform just like two 680s, to be fair, but the cores exactly aren't. This is obviously two fully fledged 7970s. Now there is a massive price difference. You can pick up a 690 now for about 800 quid. So it's like an extra 450 quid for this. But to be fair, the scores are more. Now, one thing that we do need to remember is that even out the box, even though this is stock, is running 1100 on the core. That's a good clock for single 7970s. I know single 7970s that don't do 1100 on the core. But anyway, straight off the bat, P-score 14,000 versus 17,000. That's a 3,000 point difference straight off the bat. Don't forget, like I said, it's stock versus stock. Move on to the X score. You're looking at, I mean, what are you looking at there? Nearly kind of 800 points difference. 5,715 versus 6,491. Then moving on to Vantage. Big GPU bench this. GPU score of 53,863 for a total score of 41,146. Looking on this one, you've got GPU score of 60k, look, 60,448, which gives you a P score of 56,338. That's a monumental score for a single card. I know it's got two cores on it, but you know what I'm saying, it's in one PCI slot. Now, this is where it separates the men from the boys. 32,681 for the 690 with a GPU score of 33,257 versus 37,872 with a GPU score of 37,481. Need to remember as well that the Nvidia has got physics as well, so the scores generally on these would have been so much more different, and I do mean so much more different. The card's epic, it really is. It does pump out some unreal scores. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get Unigine, and what I'm going to do is we do have 2560 that we can do, but what we're going to do is we're going to run 1920 by 1080. Then I'll bump the resolution up for the whole screen to 2560 by 1440, and we'll run it again so that you can compare the two. So I'm just going to run this quickly, and yeah, I'll be back when it's finished. Hokey chokey then peeps, open and run Heaven benchmark at 1920 by 1080 obviously. FPS is 80.1. And then the total score was 2019. We had a minimum frames per second of 42.6 and a maximum frames per second of 170.5. Now, I'm going to show you this one now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the screen resolution up to 2560 by 1440 and then also rerun the benchmark in that resolution as well so that we can compare the difference. Okie dokie then peeps, remembering it's a single card, or rather the single Aries 2, all we've done with a Unigine is turn the resolution up to 2560 by 1440, and that gave us a FPS of 51.6 and a total score of 1299. Minimum was 27.4, maximum was 111.3. Now before we had a score of 80 and 2119, so we've lost about 30 frames per second from the maximum, from the frames per second at the top, the average frames per second, and the overall score's gone down by about 700. Now I was expecting it to go down by at least half, because obviously the resolution is so much bigger. So I'm pleasantly surprised with that. Excuse me, I have just eaten. But anyway, we're going to push on now because we've got plenty more to do. Okie dokie then peeps, quick bit of Far Cry 3. Now you can see the frames per second up in the top right hand corner. Now we've only got this in 1920 by 1080 on the resolution, so it's not turned right up, and also the AA is turned right up. And I'll just walk around and you can see the frames per second, considering we've not even got the resolution up that high, isn't that great. I would have expected much more. I know there's a lot of lights and shadows and everything going on here, but I would have expected a lot more. So we're only really getting, not really hit 40 yet. Yeah, I just wanted to just walk around that bit for you, just so you can see, because I was quite surprised with the frames per second on this. When you get out into the out into the trees and you're fighting and stuff, it can get a bit jittery as well. I would have thought a few driver updates may fix this, maybe a patch for the game, because obviously the game's been massively demanding ever since it first came out anyway. So maybe they'll tweak it for dual GPU cards. But still, I wanted to show you it was a lot lower than I was expecting for a card worth this much money. Okay then, moving on to Metro. Metro always works with the dual core cards well, as you'll see later on when we do the quad fire. It's also a very demanding game, really. Bearing in mind this is two 7970s we've got in here, and it's still only just getting about 60 frames a second. Everything else is maxed out. This is why we do... Oh, I forgot to reload. This is why we do use this game, because it is really demanding. So as you can see, I've not seen anything lower than 50 so far. Oh, there we go. Got down to 45 there. But it's, you know, it's a really demanding game, which is why we still use it so regularly. But another reason, like I said, is it does work really well with more cores when you put them in. So we'll kill one more of this and then we'll call this it. Right, I won't bore you with any more. Right then, so what I do for my temperature testing is I leave Unigine looping, and I've left this one running for well over half an hour now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quit it out, go back to the desktop, and you'll see, if I close this, if I zoom you in, I'll move them over a bit for you, but you can see that I've been logging the temps. Now, this at the moment is telling you the current GPU score, fan speed and RPM, and this over here tells you the maximum. So we've had a maximum temperature of 44 degrees. Fan speed went up to 24% from 20%, and that meant the RPM of the fans went up from 1291 RPM to 1337 RPM, so elite RPM. I like that. But what I do want to say is the reason why this is so good is if we turn the fans up to 100%, you'll hear that, you know, as you would expect, they do go nuts, but it stays down at you know, below 30 most of the times. So you can hear that. Now, to be fair, most of that fan noise is coming from actually on the card itself. But if we put it down to 30, it's gone back down to practically inaudible again. The fan speeds on the radiator seem to be heavily linked to the actual temperature of the fluid that's flowing around, but I've not been able to get it to act up and start really pumping out any temps at all. But most of the fan control that you see there, the manual one, is for the actual fan that's on the card and not on the radiator, which is a bit kind of confusing. But at the same time, when I took the lid off of it in the unboxing video, you could see that there was no way that the fans were connected to the actual card. They're just connected to the water cooling loops. But anyway, that's that. So it's time to move on. Righty-heighty, you've made it to the conclusion. Woohoo! Give yourself a cookie. Now, what we would do as ever as well, I'll tell you the award and then we'll kind of explain why. And we're going to give it the Performance Award because, let's face it, it does knock some epic scores out. Reasons why we didn't give it gold, mainly the price. But the thing with this is and I know a lot of people are instantly going to be going, you can buy this, you can buy that for the same amount of money, but these things are about the exclusivity. If you don't understand that, then you're obviously not going to even want to entertain the idea of trying to get hold of one of them because they are so limited. There's 999 of them. But if you do want to be, that little bit different, maybe you've got a little bit of extra money that you want to play around and you want something, that's going to be unique within certain, kind of realms, then this could really be the card for you. Now, obviously we did have the scores drop off, but after they did drop off, they just leveled out. So it was probably just either a freak few runs at the start or the card just settling itself in. It's a shame that they couldn't have stayed as good as they were. Now, that point isn't a negative thing. I can't stress that enough. You do get that. I get it with CPUs loads, GPUs loads. This did happen a little bit quicker than normal, but obviously we've got 2 cards on here and all that kind of stuff. So it was probably just the cards themselves settling in. You generally wouldn't notice this. It was just the fact that all I ever have done with this is benchmark it. I've never sat there just gaming normally, which is, if that was what you were doing at home, you honestly wouldn't have noticed, because it didn't really make that much difference to frames per second. I mean, the difference to frames per second, you would have been lucky if it had made 1 frames per second difference on your average. So not something that you would have noticed. But the card itself, with the attached water cooling thing, something I do have to say with that is, if you look at the back of your case, say you're thinking about buying this, look at the back of your case where your 120mm fan is. If that's where you're planning on putting this, then there's 2 things that you have to keep in mind. First one, and most important one, is if you put this at the back of your case, you are not going to be able to use pretty much any of the performance air cooling heat sinks on your CPU. Second, if you're going to be running something like a H100, H100i, or any of the other enclosed water cooling systems, what you need to make sure is you've got enough room above your 120mm fan on the back of the case to be able to fit your enclosed water cooling. So say for argument's sake, you're going to be fitting a H100 and you want the radiator and the fans inside, plus a little bit of room to breathe. That means you're going to need a good, 50mm would be your minimum, and it'd be near enough touching. So we'll say 60mm, so you've got breathing room. And that's because where the radiator and the fans for this comes into your case so much, you need to make sure that the H100 has got enough room above it, which is one of the things I think is quite restrictive about this, because I know a lot of you are going to say you can put it in the bottom, you can put it in the front, and that's all well and good, you can, but I'm just trying to be specific about some compatibility issues you may run into with this in the back. Now, obviously, everyone's going to go, you could have bought, this and a water block. And to be fair, I think you could have done. There are plenty of manufacturers out there now that do supply water blocks natively on their cards. But the thing with this is they've made it quite accessible. It's something that you can buy and just run. And to be honest, that little water cooling loop thing works really, really well. When I first saw it, I hated it. And I mean, literally on paper, when Asus first said to me about it, I was like, brilliant. Gonna struggle to find nice stuff to say about that. But to be fair, you can't hear the pumps. The fans hardly ever spin up. And the temperatures are brilliant. And I mean, really good. Really, really good. To the point of, it's like, wow, that's done really, really well. It really did kind of make me sit back and kind of like, rethink things a little bit. I'm still not 100% sold on the all-in-one side of it, I'll be fair. Something else I did think, and it would have been an even crazier step forward, but it would have been nice if maybe they'd had a thick 240mm radiator and then add a CPU block as well. So it was kind of a chuck it all on at once type of thing. Now that would have made things even more limited, but again, it's £1,000 graphics card that's exclusive and limited in the first place. So if you are thinking about buying it, you're probably not going to be worried about if you did have to buy a different case or something. But anyway, that was just kind of like a random thought. You never know, that might appear later on with a different card or something. But nonetheless, the scores on this, they did chuck it out like no one's business. Stock for stock, absolutely decimated a 690. Stock for stock, it blew away 4 individual 790s. And even once the scores are dropped off, the overclock scores were massive. So we were 100% sold with the performance of this card. Now, something I also need to stress is with a 7970, 1100 on the core for a 7970. If you can get that far with a decent overclock and good temps, you're doing pretty well. I've had cards that wouldn't do 1050, let alone 1100. Now with this, the fact that we could, we had stable clocks at that, and then we could even overclock past it. I mean, we were still seeing our overclock scores increasing at 1250 megahertz. It is a very strong and capable card. Now, the only thing I can say about this really is it's probably not the card itself. It's more that Asus have cherry picked the GPUs that are on there, which for a card like this, I'm quite happy to kind of say really, because if they would have to have cherry picked them to have got that 1100 megahertz anyway. And it does kind of like appease the price a little bit more, that you know that they are going to be GPU cores that are going to perform really well. So they finally did do the cherry picking. Now the reason why I say it probably not the card is because a reference PCB, even without volt mods, if the GPU's are capable of it, most of those will do 1200 to 1300, because I've tested them and played about them myself. Sometimes you have to extend overclocking limits in the BIOS and stuff, but you don't necessarily need to do anything massively intensive, and generally you can just go into Afterburner beyond that with a little bit of overvoltage and some decent cooling and get the most out of them. I had one of the reference boards that I had, which was Vantage stable at 1250 megahertz, and would do most other benches at 1340. Yes, it was water cooled, but that was really because it was just something that we chucked on there. You could have had it on an air cooling with the reference card. You just would have had to have set the fan profiles up to have been able to have kept it cool, though it wouldn't have got massively hot. Just would have meant that the fan would have spun up a little bit more to have balanced things out. But then again, I've said that about the 7970s all along really. They are very, very good GPU cores, and you just need to make sure play the silicon lottery really and try and get a good one. I remember the days with 775 CPUs where we used to spend weeks researching which retailer had got a specific batch of CPUs so that we could try and go and get one of those, because we knew that batch would overclock better. So again, it's silicon lottery will still play a huge part in your overclocking and your experience. Obviously these are all going to come out of the box and work at stock fine, but when you start pushing beyond that, should you want to, that's when you're again still going to be coming to the silicon lottery. But I would have thought that if you don't get 1200 megahertz out of yours, then you've been either really unlucky or you've not set it up right. The most important thing really is that power meter at the bottom of GPU tweak, the percentage one. It's the one right at the very bottom. That's going to be one of the most important things for you to have a play around with, because that's all to do with the amps and the amount of power that you can put through rather than the actual volts themselves. So, performance award, it has got its drawbacks. It will be a Marmite card. You will quite literally either love it or you'll hate it. I initially hated it, but it certainly won me around to the point where I've kind of got to the stage of thinking, I can see uses for it, rather than when I first saw it, I was like, oh my God, what have they done? When you use it, it does win you over, because like I said, the performance is there. It does get really quiet, and as long as you plan things out a little bit with it when you first get it, so it looks nice, when you fit it, that's, you know, you're not going to have a problem. What I would say though is for most people, I would try and get it in the bottom of your case to leave that CPU area uninterrupted, because by the time you have got, say if you did fit it in the back of your case and then like you've got a H100i or whatever in the roof of your case, everything's going to look so busy and blocked up there again. And the point of the IIO stuff is it's meant to keep things kind of looking quite minimal compared to the air cooling stuff. So I would say GPU in the bottom if it will reach, and then put in your H100 or whatever in the roof. But we will leave it there. I've gone round and around in circles enough. Great card. Don't forget, I am going to be overclocking. I am going to be uploading a video with 2 of these beasts as well, which we're going to be benchmarking and having a play with and seeing whether they do work together, because a lot of the time when you put two core cards together, they don't like each other very much. So we will see. That's going to be going up in a separate video, so make sure you go and look for that on the Time to Live Customs channel, OC3D TV, whatever you want to call it. I should really have changed that name when I had a chance right at the very beginning, but never mind, it's a bit too late now. But, for now at least, this is Tiny Tom Logan with the Asus Aries 2 Dual 7970 Performance Award winner review for you, out.